Hey, what is up guys, and welcome back once again. Today we're going to be checking out Downfall, which is a slight spin-off on the previous map I showed you guys, which was called Solitude. And for those of you who saw that video, I'm sure you heard me mention that that map was based off Mercy from Gears of War 3, which, like I said, I thought was pretty cool, although one part that I thought was lacking from that map was my own personal touches. And I had said something about trying out a much darker version of the map with possibly an ODST theme, so that's what you're going to be seeing today. And aside from the various ODST aspects of this map, I also tried to include some kind of another backstory that really gave this place a lot more meaning, and I think that's one thing that was definitely lacking from the first show around of the previous version. So this time around we've got a variety of Covenant weapons and UNSC weapons. Last time it was Covenant and Promethean, which, for the backstory now, didn't really make sense. But since we do have the ODST theme going, we've got quite a few suppressed weapons. And the main backstory behind this place, which involves the owner, is that he was very much so a Covenant enthusiast, and more likely than not was housing maybe a few rogue Covenant members that the UNSC was hunting down here inside of his little sanctuary or manor. And I'd say that becomes most apparent through obviously most of the Covenant weapons, but also the fact that there's a hunter's arm inside the chapel. And I think that detail alone explains quite a few things. Not only that he was fond of the Covenant, but maybe the reason for that was because he wanted to maybe examine them or just study them. And that could explain why he ended up taking him into his care and going against the wishes of the UNSC. Aside from the backstory, I'm sure you'll notice the map really has a whole new look to it, and that's really thanks to the new filter and also the new weather effects. And not to mention the sounds have been changed up a lot too, just to make it seem like there's somewhat of a storm going on here. And I think all these put together really give the map a much darker feel, and to me at least, it's really reminiscent of that first level in ODST where you're all by yourself and just kind of roaming through the city, which really gave me a very lonely feeling, and I thought that would be a cool way to go about this map. In terms of the structure of the map, not too much has changed, so if you want to see a really in-depth or decently in-depth walkthrough of that, you can check out the previous video, which was on the map Solitude. But in this case, nothing really has changed aside from maybe a few lights and obviously the weapons. So we'll go ahead and take a look at those right now. Starting with the suppressed SMG, which once again is really just very reminiscent of ODST. And same thing goes for the tactical Magnum, which is where the bolt shot used to be. Now there are a few weapons that have stayed how they were in the previous map, such as the Covenant Carbine and also the beam rifle, which just so happens to be up on the little raised balcony there. Now if we come up these stairs, and once again the map is symmetrical, so the weapons are going to be the same for both sides, you'll find that up here is a DMR, which I think is a really cool weapon for this map, mainly just because of how it looks while you aim down the scope. And since the map is so dark, the sightlines are really reduced, and I think having a scope is definitely a must if you want to engage in that long-range combat. But anyways, moving on, down here in the little walkway area, we have our shotgun, and this is where the scatter shot used to be, so a pretty similar weapon layout, but I think this one definitely goes along a lot better with the new theme we've got going. And notice as we shoot this, there isn't any lag anymore, which is definitely nice, because if you saw the previous video, whenever we would pick up a weapon or try and shoot it, there would be a little bit of lag here and there. And the reason for that was there were just way too many objects on the map, so what I've done is I've tried to reduce that as much as possible, and I think that's helped out quite a bit. Oh yeah, and right here, this is once again just another one of our drop pods that I've decided to place down, and I think there's 3 of these total on the map. 2 of them should be over on that side, and I tried to give each one a little bit of a different look from the others. Like I said, up here is the beam rifle, the classic one from Halo 2, 3, and I guess pretty much any game except maybe Halo 5 and 4. And the way I see it, you can really take this thing wherever you want on the map, since there are so many shadows and dark areas to almost hide away in. Whereas before with Solitude, there were really only a few locations where you had a decent amount of cover and also that height advantage as well. So I think each version of the map is going to play a little bit differently from one another, and that's one thing I really like. And then last but not least, before we move around and check out the other, I think, last two weapons, here's that third drop pod. And then if you didn't see my show off of Solitude, this here is just one more of the enterable buildings. It is very dark, but I think it definitely has a cool atmosphere with some of these flickering lights. And maybe a good place for some people to try their luck with the shotgun in. Or even, speaking of close range weapons, the energy sword, which is indeed the Flood version. Now at this point, I haven't tested it out too much, so I'm honestly not sure what the difference is between this one and the regular one is, aside from looks. But I just figured the coloring of it went a bit better with the color palette of the map. So that's why I chose this one instead of the standard energy sword. Also, one more thing that's changed in terms of weapons are the types of grenades. Because before, right here, we had the Forerunner ones, and now it's just 2 plasma grenades. And like I showed you earlier, if we come inside the church or chapel, we do have ourselves the Hunter's Arm. Now, as for this weapon, I'm not too sure if it's going to remain in the map or maybe get switched out with its counterpart, because if we test it out really quick, you'll see it shoots very fast, and I was kind of hoping for the standard charge up and then fire one big ball. And like I said, I know there's one more version of it, so maybe that one does what I thought it would. But either way, I just think, once again, it goes along pretty great with the backstory I had lined up. So that's why this ended up being one of the 3 main power weapons for this map. But yeah, guys, I'd say that'll just about wrap up the showcase for today. So hopefully you did enjoy the video. I think this may be the last one we do for a while, just because personally I'd rather put, a bit more production value into these videos, and sadly the Halo 5 on PC doesn't have any access to the theater mode, so as of now that's not really an option. And although I do really enjoy doing these little showcases, once again I would just much prefer to do a higher quality version of it. Good news is I think they should be updating the game pretty soon and maybe adding some of that stuff to the PC version, so hopefully we should get back to these within no time. Oh, and I almost forgot, if you're wondering how this map plays, I would say it might be best suited for anywhere from a 2v2 Slayer match up to 4v4. I haven't tried that many players as of yet, but I think the map is definitely big enough for it, and also has a little bit of verticality, so it should be fine. And also, since the map is quite a bit darker, I think SWAT would play really well on it, especially if you tried using the silenced battle rifles. I think that could make for a much slower paced game of SWAT that was potentially a bit more sneaky. But anyways, if you want to download the map, it is called Downfall. And if you don't like this dark look, there's also Solitude, which is a much brighter map. So for those of you who want to check it out, I'll make sure and have a link down in the description. But other than that, thanks for watching, guys. Once again, hopefully you did enjoy the video and the build. And as always, I will see you in the next one.